For years, the human man believed he lived alone, but an alien woman was secretly watching over him. Lucas woke up to another quiet morning. The sun filtered through the trees surrounding his cabin, casting long shadows on the ground. He stretched his arms, the weariness of years spent in solitude pulling at him. The silence was comforting, yet it gnawed at him in ways he couldn't explain. He had chosen to leave the world behind, to retire from the chaos of the cities and the noise of human life. For a long time, the peace of isolation had been enough, but now, with each passing day, it felt heavier. The stillness had become suffocating. He rose from his bed and made his way to the small window of his cabin. Outside, the forest stretched endlessly, the trees standing tall like silent sentinels. The mountains in the distance were covered in mist, their peaks disappearing into the sky. Lucas had always loved this view, but today it felt different. Today it felt distant, as though the world outside had moved on without him. He had been living in this cabin for 5 years now, and in those 5 years he had lost touch with the world. His family had long since stopped trying to contact him. The letters had stopped coming. The phone calls, too. He had chosen this life after all, but it didn't make the loneliness any easier to bear. At first, it had been a relief. He didn't need the company of anyone. The days were quiet and the nights were calm. But now the quiet seemed to echo louder than before. The stillness was a reminder of everything he had left behind. Lucas shook his head, pushing the thoughts away. He had no use for self-pity. He had chosen this life and he would live it. He had no regrets. He was free from the obligations that had once weighed him down. He had no one to answer to, no one to disappoint. His mind wandered briefly to the city, to the people he used to know, but he quickly dismissed the thought. The city was full of noise. He had no place there anymore. With a sigh, Lucas moved to the kitchen and began preparing his breakfast. He went through the motions of the morning with practiced ease. He had done this routine so many times that it felt automatic. It was the only part of his day that still felt familiar. He fried an egg, toasted some bread, and poured a cup of coffee. As he sat at the small table by the window, eating in silence, his mind drifted back to the days before he came here. He had been a military man once. A soldier in a world of constant conflict. He had fought in wars that spanned continents, seen things that no one should have to see. And when it was all over, when the wars had ended and the world seemed to settle into peace, Lucas had found himself empty. The adrenaline, the constant rush, had left him with nothing but a hollow feeling, so he left. He left it all behind. The war, the violence, the expectations, and for the first time in his life he was free, but freedom came with its own price. As the years passed, the isolation became harder to bear. The cabin, which had once been his sanctuary, now felt like a prison. He was trapped in his own mind with nothing but his thoughts to keep him company. He didn't know what he was searching for anymore. He had hoped that solitude would give him the answers, that the silence would allow him to heal. But it hadn't. Instead, it had left him feeling more lost than ever. One day, as Lucas sat outside on the porch, staring into the trees, he thought he saw something moving in the distance. At first, he dismissed it as just a trick of the light or the movement of the wind through the branches. But then, he saw it again. A shadow. A figure barely visible darting between the trees. He stood up, squinting, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The forest was vast, and it was easy to imagine things out here, but this felt different. There was something out there. For days, Lucas tried to ignore it. He told himself that it was just his mind playing tricks on him. The loneliness had started to get to him, he thought, but the feeling didn't go away. Every time he went outside, he could sense that something, or someone, was watching him. He couldn't shake the feeling, and it made his skin crawl. Who could it be? Was someone else out here living in the wilderness like him, or was it something else entirely? The tension built, gnawing at him day after day. He tried to tell himself that it was nothing, that he was being paranoid. After all, he had lived here for years without incident. There was no reason for him to believe that someone was watching him now. Yet, the feeling wouldn't leave him. Every rustle of leaves, every snapping of a twig made his heart race. He couldn't help but look over his shoulder, half expecting to see a face peering out from behind the trees. Then one evening, just as the sun was setting and the sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, Lucas heard a sound. It was soft at first, just a whisper in the wind. But then it grew louder. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, and impossibly quiet. He turned toward the forest, his pulse quickening. He stood still, trying to hear, trying to understand. The footsteps continued, moving closer, but he couldn't see anything. Luca's breath caught in his throat. His mind raced, and for a moment he considered running. But something held him in place. The footsteps stopped just outside the edge of the trees. There was silence, a heavy, suffocating silence that seemed to stretch on forever. And then he saw it, a shadow moving between the trees just out of reach. It was not a human figure, not exactly. It was something else. Something. Alien, he blinked, his heart pounding. Was he imagining this? Was he losing his mind? The figure disappeared as quickly as it had appeared, leaving Lucas standing there, frozen in disbelief. His instincts screamed at him to run, to hide, but something else, something deep within him, kept him rooted to the spot. For the first time in years, Lucas felt a spark of hope, mixed with an overwhelming sense of fear. Who, or what, had been watching him? He knew one thing for certain. His life, as quiet and solitary as it had been, was about to change. The next few days passed slowly for Lucas, each one filled with an uneasy tension that he couldn't shake. The strange figure in the woods lingered in his mind, haunting him like a shadow that wouldn't fade. Every time he stepped outside, his eyes scanned the trees, his senses alert to any movement. But there was nothing. The forest seemed still, too still. He began to wonder if he had imagined the whole thing, a trick of his mind brought on by isolation and loneliness. But deep down, he knew it wasn't just his imagination. Something was out there, something that had been watching him for longer than he cared to admit. He tried to carry on with his usual routine, keeping busy with the work that needed to be done around the cabin. But it wasn't the same. The work no longer offered the satisfaction it once had. His mind was elsewhere, constantly drawn back to the feeling of being watched. He could no longer ignore it. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned dark, Lucas was sitting on the porch, staring out at the endless stretch of trees. The wind had picked up, rustling the leaves and sending the scent of pine into the air. It was the kind of evening that should have been peaceful, yet there was a weight in the air that felt oppressive. He stood up restless and began walking toward the forest's edge, drawn by an invisible pull. As he walked deeper into the trees, the familiar sound of his footsteps on the dry leaves seemed to amplify in the silence. He had walked this path 100 times, but tonight it felt different. The forest felt alive, as though it were watching him, responding to his every movement. The shadows cast by the trees seemed longer, darker, and more pronounced. He quickened his pace, trying to shake off the growing sense of dread that clung to him. Suddenly, a crack of a twig broke the stillness, sharp and loud. Lucas froze, his heart pounding. He stood motionless, listening intently. The sound had come from somewhere ahead of him, just beyond the reach of the dim light. Was it another animal, or was it something else? His instincts told him to turn back, to run, but something held him in place. The feeling of being watched was stronger than ever, but this time it wasn't just a feeling. He could sense it, like a presence lurking just out of sight, waiting. He took a deep breath and stepped forward, moving cautiously toward the source of the sound. The forest seemed to close in around him, the shadows growing deeper with each step. His pulse raced in his chest, but he refused to let fear control him. He had lived alone in these woods for years. Nothing had ever been able to harm him before. Why should tonight be any different? Then he saw it again. The figure. It was standing in the distance, just beyond the tree line, barely visible in the fading light. Lucas' breath caught in his throat as his eyes locked onto the shape. It was tall and slender, moving with an almost unnatural grace. It was not a human, but it wasn't like anything he had seen before. It shimmered in the low light, its form shifting, as if it were made of something intangible, something otherworldly. For a moment, Lucas thought he had imagined it again, but then the figure moved, slowly and deliberately, stepping into the moonlight. His heart skipped a beat. It wasn't a trick of the light. It was real. Lucas wanted to run, to flee back to the safety of his cabin, but his feet felt frozen to the ground. He couldn't look away from the figure, his mind struggling to make sense of what he was seeing. The creature seemed to notice him too, its head tilting slightly as if studying him. The air around him seemed to grow colder, and the shadows lengthened as though the forest itself was waiting for something to happen. The figure moved again, this time closer, stepping silently through the underbrush. Lucas took a step back, his mind racing. He wanted to call out, to ask what it wanted, but the words caught in his throat. It was as though his voice had been stolen away by the presence of the creature. His instincts told him to run, but his curiosity held him in place. And then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the figure disappeared into the darkness of the forest, vanishing without a trace. Lucas stood there for a long time, unable to move, his mind reeling. What had just happened? Had he really seen what he thought he had? He had to have imagined it. It didn't make sense. Nothing in his life had ever prepared him for something like this. He had been alone for so long that he had forgotten what it felt like to share the world with another. But this was something else, something far beyond anything he could comprehend. He finally turned and made his way back to the cabin, his steps unsteady, his heart still racing. His mind was filled with questions, but the biggest one loomed over all the others. Who, or what, had been watching him all this time? As he entered the cabin, Lucas locked the door behind him and sank down into a chair, his mind spinning. He couldn't stop thinking about the figure, about how it had moved with such ease and grace, how it had seemed to know exactly where he was, as if it had been waiting for him. But why? What was its purpose? And why had it appeared now after all this time? The cabin felt colder now, the silence heavier. The walls, once his sanctuary, now seemed to close in on him. The feeling of being watched was overwhelming, and Lucas couldn't shake it. It was as if the very air around him had changed, as if the forest had come alive with eyes, hidden in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. That night, Lucas couldn't sleep. His mind was too full of questions, too full of the unknown. He lay in his bed, staring up at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the forest outside. Every creak of the wood, every rustle of leaves seemed amplified in the stillness. He tried to push the thoughts away, but they kept coming back. Who was watching him? What did it want? And why had it chosen to reveal itself now? The answers, he realized, were out there, in the forest, in the darkness. He had to find them, even if it meant facing whatever strange force had been watching him all these years. As the hours stretched on, Lucas made a decision. Tomorrow, he would go back into the woods. He would find out what was watching him once and for all. But deep down, he knew that whatever he would find would change everything. He wasn't just living alone anymore. And whatever, or whoever, was out there in the woods wasn't just a curious stranger. It was something far more complicated, something that had been waiting for him, watching him. The next day, Lucas couldn't shake the strange encounter from his mind. His thoughts were clouded, his senses alert to every rustle in the wind, every snap of a twig underfoot. He spent the morning trying to go about his usual tasks, but nothing seemed to hold his attention. The image of the figure he had seen in the woods lingered in his mind like a vivid dream, refusing to fade away. He tried to convince himself it was just a trick of the light or his mind playing tricks on him, but deep down he knew it was. What he had seen was real. It wasn't just a fleeting shadow or a figment of his imagination. It was something else, something that had been watching him for a long time, something that had been hidden in the darkness, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. Lucas couldn't ignore the feeling any longer. He had to know what it was. He had to find out what had been hiding in the woods, watching him from the shadows. So he grabbed his jacket, laced up his boots, and set out toward the forest once again. His heart raced in his chest, a mixture of fear and curiosity driving him forward. As he entered the trees, the familiar sounds of the forest surrounded him, the chirping of birds, the rustling of leaves, and the soft crunch of dirt under his feet. But today, everything felt different. The air was thick with tension, as though the forest itself was holding its breath. Lucas felt the weight of every step, as if the earth beneath him was watching him, waiting. He walked deeper into the woods, following the path he had taken the day before. The trees seemed to grow taller, their branches reaching out like twisted fingers, blocking the sunlight and casting long, eerie shadows. The deeper he went, the more oppressive the silence became. It was as if the forest had swallowed all sound, leaving only the pounding of his own heart to fill the space. And then he saw it again. The figure. This time it was clearer, standing just at the edge of his vision. It was tall, its body slender and elongated, its shape shifting and shimmering in the dim light. Lucas stopped dead in his tracks, his breath catching in his throat. The figure stood still, as if it had been waiting for him. Its eyes, if they could be called eyes, glowed faintly like twin stars in the darkness. For a long moment, Lucas couldn't move. He was frozen in place, his heart pounding in his chest. He had come here looking for answers, but now that he had found the source of his fears, he wasn't sure what to do next. Should he run? Should he call out? Or should he wait for whatever was happening to unfold? The figure seemed to sense his hesitation. Slowly it began to move, its body gliding through the trees with an eerie grace. It didn't walk like a human. It didn't even seem to touch the ground, its feet hovering just above the earth. Lucas took a step back, his breath shallow, his eyes never leaving the figure. He had no idea what it was, but he knew one thing for certain: it wasn't human. As the figure moved closer, Lucas felt a strange pull, a magnetic force that drew him in. His fear melted away, replaced by an overwhelming sense of curiosity. What was it? What did it want? Why had it been watching him for so long? The figure stopped in front of him, standing just a few feet away. Lucas could feel the heat radiating off its body, a warmth that was both comforting and unsettling at the same time. For a moment, neither of them moved. The air between them was thick with tension, as if the forest itself was waiting for something to happen. And then the figure spoke. Its voice was soft, like the whisper of the wind, but it was clear and unmistakable. "You have questions," it said, its tone both comforting and foreign. "And I have answers." Lucas' heart skipped a beat. The voice wasn't what he had expected. It wasn't mechanical or cold like he had imagined. It was warm, almost human, yet distinctly different. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. Instead, he nodded, silently urging the figure to continue. "I have been watching you," the figure continued, "for a long time, longer than you realize." Lucas' mind raced, trying to process the words. He had known deep down that he wasn't truly alone, but to hear it out loud from the mouth of the very thing that had been watching him was a shock he couldn't have prepared for. "Why?" he finally managed to ask, his voice hoarse. "Why have you been watching me?" "What do you want from me?" The figure's eyes, if they could be called eyes, seemed to glow brighter at his question. "I am not here to harm you," it said softly. "I was sent to observe, to understand." "Understand what?" Lucas asked, his voice trembling with both fear and curiosity. The figure tilted its head as though considering the question. "Your species," it said slowly. "Humans, I have been watching you, learning about you. Your strength, your resilience, your ability to survive even in the most difficult of circumstances. You have a unique spirit, one that I could not ignore." Lucas' mind spun. "Why me? Why have you been watching me specifically?" The figure's form shimmered again, like a mirage shifting in the wind. "You are different," it said. "You have been alone for so long, yet you continue to survive. You continue to fight. You are the one I have chosen to observe." Lucas swallowed hard, trying to make sense of what the figure was saying. "So, you've been watching me all this time, from up there?" he asked, pointing to the sky. The figure nodded. "Yes, I am not from here, I am not like you, but I have watched you, and I have learned." Lucas took a step forward, his heart racing. "What do you want from me? Why show yourself now?" The figure remained still, its form shifting as though it were considering his question. "I am here to offer you a choice," it said, its voice softer now, almost gentle. "You can return to your life as it was, or you can come with me. You can leave this place and see the world as I see it. I can show you what lies beyond your understanding. I can give you knowledge, and you can choose to walk a different path." Lucas stared at the figure, his mind reeling. A part of him wanted to refuse, to turn away and return to the life he had built in isolation. But another part of him, something deep within, yearned for the answers, for the truth. He had spent years running from the world, hiding in this cabin, but now he had the chance to step outside, to explore what he had always felt was just beyond his reach. The choice lay before him, clear and undeniable. He didn't know what the future would hold, but he knew one thing for certain: he couldn't stay here forever. The world, the universe, was too big, too mysterious for him to remain hidden forever. He took a deep breath and looked up at the figure, his heart steadying. "I'll come with you," he said quietly. The figure nodded, its form glowing brighter than before. "Then come," it said, its voice soft but filled with certainty. As the figure reached out a hand toward him, Lucas stepped forward, feeling the pull of something greater than himself. The forest around them seemed to fade away, and for the first time in years, Lucas felt the weight of his isolation lift. He wasn't alone anymore. The journey, he realized, was just beginning. Lucas stood still, staring at the alien figure that had watched him for so long. The air between them felt thick with meaning, heavy with the weight of the choice he had just made. He wasn't sure if he was ready for this, but something deep inside told him it was the right decision. The loneliness that had once consumed him seemed like a distant memory now, replaced by a sense of anticipation and fear. The figure before him shimmered, its form glowing with an ethereal light. It wasn't exactly human, and yet it was more than just an alien. There was something about it, something that made Lucas feel both small and significant all at once. It wasn't just an observer anymore. It was something more, a guide, a teacher, maybe even a companion. The figure extended a hand toward him, its movements slow and deliberate. The light around it seemed to pulse, as if it were alive. Lucas hesitated for a moment, his mind racing. He had lived so long in isolation, kept his distance from everything, from everyone. And now here was this being, offering him something he had never expected, a chance to leave his solitude behind and step into a world he could barely understand. "Come with me," the figure said, its voice soft but firm, almost like a whisper in the wind. "It's time to see what lies beyond." Lucas nodded, swallowing the knot that had formed in his throat. He took a deep breath and stepped forward, reaching out to grasp the figure's hand. The moment his fingers made contact with the alien's skin, a surge of warmth flooded through him. It was as though an invisible connection had been formed, one that bridged the gap between his world and whatever world lay beyond. The warmth spread through his arm into his chest and filled him with a sense of peace and wonder. Without another word, the figure turned and began to walk, leading Lucas through the dense forest. It was strange. Lucas had walked this path 100 times before, yet now it felt like a completely different place. The trees seemed taller, the shadows deeper, the air thicker with mystery. It was as though the world had shifted and he was now a part of something much bigger. They walked in silence for a long time. Lucas didn't know where they were going, but he trusted the figure. He had no choice but to trust it. This was the first time in years that he had felt something other than fear or loneliness. There was something calming about the figure's presence, something that made him feel safe despite the overwhelming uncertainty. After what felt like hours, they reached the edge of the forest. The trees parted, revealing a vast open space bathed in the soft light of the moon. And beyond the open space, rising like a great monument, was a ship, a sleek silver vessel that seemed to glow with its own light as though it were alive. Lucas stood frozen in awe. The ship was unlike anything he had ever seen. It didn't look like anything from Earth, yet it seemed to fit perfectly within the landscape, as though it belonged here in the forest under the stars. "This is where I come from," the figure said, gesturing toward the ship. "This is my home, and now it can be yours." Lucas felt a flutter of excitement in his chest, mingled with a deep sense of awe. The ship was beautiful, its design smooth and flowing, unlike anything man-made. The figure seemed to be waiting for him, its gaze fixed on him as though it knew exactly what he was thinking. Without saying another word, it led him toward the ship. As they approached, a door opened silently, as if it had been waiting for them. The inside of the ship was just as otherworldly as its exterior. The walls were made of a smooth, translucent material that shifted in color as they moved past it. Soft, glowing lights illuminated the space, casting a serene glow across the interior. Lucas couldn't help but feel a sense of wonder. He had never imagined that something like this could exist. It felt like a dream, and yet he knew it was. He was here, standing inside an alien vessel, about to embark on a journey that would change his life forever. "Welcome aboard," the figure said, its voice gentle. "There is much to show you." Lucas nodded, his heart racing. He was overwhelmed by the beauty and mystery of everything around him, but there was also something else, a deep sense of longing, as though he had been waiting for this moment without even realizing it. He had spent so many years alone, locked away in his cabin, but now he felt connected to something far greater than himself. The figure motioned for him to follow, and they moved deeper into the ship. The interior seemed to go on forever, with corridors that twisted and turned in ways that defied logic. Everything was sleek, smooth, and unlike anything Lucas had ever seen. The walls seemed to pulse with energy, and the air smelled faintly of something sweet, like the scent of rain after a long drought. They finally arrived in a large room at the heart of the ship. In the center of the room was a strange device, a large, circular platform surrounded by glowing symbols and intricate patterns. It looked like some kind of control center, but Lucas couldn't make sense of it. The figure walked toward the platform and stood beside it, its gaze focused on the symbols. "This is the heart of our ship," the figure explained. "It connects us to everything, the ship itself, the universe, and the knowledge we carry. I have brought you here because you are ready. You are ready to understand." Lucas stepped forward, his curiosity growing stronger with each passing moment. He had no idea what the figure meant, but he felt that he had to understand. There was a part of him that had always known there was more to the world than what he had seen, more to life than what he had experienced. He had spent years searching for meaning, and now, here it was, standing before him, offering him the chance to learn, to see, to explore. The figure turned to him, its eyes glowing softly in the dim light. "I have been watching you for a long time, Lucas," it said. "I have seen your struggles, your pain, your strength. I have seen the way you fight, even when you are alone. But now it is time for you to see the bigger picture. There is so much more to discover, and I will show you." Lucas swallowed, his heart racing. "What do you mean? What do you want me to see?" The figure smiled, a gesture that seemed both comforting and mysterious. "I want you to see the universe. I want you to see what lies beyond the stars. I want you to understand the truth of who you are and why you have been chosen." The words echoed in Lucas's mind. Chosen. He had never felt special, never felt like he was anything more than an ordinary man. But now, standing here inside this alien ship, with the figure beside him, he realized that his life had always been leading him to this moment. He had been chosen for something greater, something he couldn't yet comprehend. The figure gestured toward the platform, and Lucas stepped forward, feeling the pull of the unknown. He placed his hand on the cool surface of the device, and instantly the symbols around it began to glow brighter. The room seemed to come alive, and Lucas felt a surge of energy fill the air. His heart pounded in his chest, and for the first time in years he felt truly alive, connected to something far beyond himself. "Are you ready?" the figure asked, its voice soft yet full of certainty. Lucas looked up, his eyes wide with wonder. "Yes," he whispered. And with that, the journey began. Lucas felt a strange sensation wash over him as his hand made contact with the cool surface of the glowing platform. The moment his skin touched it, the symbols surrounding him seemed to pulse, and the air in the room shifted. It was as if the ship itself had come alive. The soft hum of energy filled his ears, and a warm, gentle light enveloped him, making him feel both calm and excited all at once. His heart raced as the figure beside him stood still, watching him with a quiet intensity. The alien being, who had revealed itself as both his watcher and guide, had led him here to this moment. The purpose, the meaning of it all was still unclear, but Lucas could sense that this was a turning point. He had asked for answers, and now they were being offered in ways that were beyond anything he could have imagined. "Trust the process," the figure said softly. "Let the knowledge come to you." Lucas nodded, though he wasn't entirely sure what that meant. He had spent so much of his life alone, hiding from the world, from any form of connection. And now, everything seemed to be unfolding so quickly, as if the universe itself had been waiting for him to step forward. He felt both overwhelmed and awestruck by the possibilities. A soft glow began to radiate from the platform, and the symbols around it started to move, swirling in intricate patterns that were both beautiful and mesmerizing. The symbols shifted and changed, and suddenly images began to form in Lucas's mind, as if they were being projected directly into his consciousness. He saw stars, hundreds, thousands, millions of them, spread across the vast emptiness of space. He saw planets and moons, distant worlds, and civilizations that stretched far beyond the confines of Earth. The universe opened up before him like a book, its pages filled with stories and knowledge that Lucas could barely comprehend. He saw the figure, the being standing beside him, travel across the stars. He saw its people, their homeworld, and the way they had watched over countless civilizations throughout the galaxy. The alien race, like the figure that had guided him, had been observing humanity for ages, studying its growth, its potential, and its flaws. The figure had chosen Lucas for a reason, and now Lucas was beginning to understand why. "You are more than just a man," the figure's voice broke through his thoughts, calm and steady. "You are the key. Humanity's future lies in your hands, just as much as it lies in the hands of those who will come after you. But to understand your role, you must see the bigger picture." The images continued to flood his mind. Lucas saw the rise and fall of empires, the struggles of different civilizations, the endless cycle of creation and destruction that seemed to define the universe. But as the images passed, he also saw something else: hope. He saw the moments when humanity had come together, when people had overcome their differences, when they had chosen to build, to create, and to reach for the stars. "Your world is at a crossroads," the figure continued, its voice soft but filled with a sense of urgency. "The choices you make now will shape the future of your people. I have watched over you, and I have seen your strength, your resilience. But you must learn to harness that power to understand your potential. You are not alone, Lucas, and you never were. The words echoed in Lucas's mind, and he felt a surge of emotion. He had always believed that he was alone, that the world had forgotten him. But now, standing here in the heart of an alien ship, he realized that he had never truly been forgotten. Someone had always been watching, guiding, waiting for him to understand. His entire life, the isolation he had chosen, it all made sense now. He had been chosen for something greater, and it wasn't just about him. It was about the future of humanity. As the images faded, Lucas found himself standing in the center of the room, his hand still resting on the platform. The glow around him began to dim, and the symbols slowly stopped moving. The air was still, and the room felt more grounded now, as though the ship itself was returning to a state of quiet calm. The figure turned to him, its gaze steady and patient. "Are you ready to begin?" it asked, its voice gentle yet filled with determination. Lucas took a deep breath. The weight of everything he had seen, everything he had learned, was almost too much to bear. He had come here seeking answers, but now that they were being revealed, he realized that the answers weren't just about him. They were about the future of Earth, the future of every living being on it. "I'm ready," he said quietly, his voice filled with a new sense of resolve. The figure nodded. "Then we begin." Without another word, the figure stepped toward the central control panel, and as it did, Lucas noticed the ship begin to hum once more. The room filled with light again, brighter this time, as the ship seemed to come to life. The air felt charged, as though the ship was preparing to move. "We must leave," the figure said, turning back to Lucas. "There is much to be done, and the time to act is now." Lucas nodded, feeling a sense of purpose rise within him. He wasn't sure where this journey would take him, but he knew one thing for certain: this was only the beginning. The answers he had been seeking, the knowledge of the universe, was now within his reach. But with that knowledge came responsibility. He had a part to play in the future of humanity, and he wasn't about to turn away from it. The ship began to move, its sleek surface gliding effortlessly through the atmosphere. Lucas watched in awe as the cabin around him seemed to shift, the walls dissolving into views of space. He saw stars, distant galaxies, and planets that seemed so close, he could almost reach out and touch them. It was as if the ship was traveling faster than light, racing through the universe with ease. He stood beside the figure who had become his guide, his mentor. The alien being had shown him the way, but Lucas knew that the real journey was just beginning. As they traveled farther into the cosmos, Lucas realized that this was the first step toward something much greater. He had always believed that his life was ordinary, that he was just another man, lost in the world. But now he understood that he had been part of something far bigger. His actions, his choices mattered, and they would have a lasting impact on the future of humanity. The figure spoke once more, its voice calm and reassuring. "You are not alone anymore, Lucas. You never were. The universe is vast, but you are part of it. You have the power to shape your world, to shape the future. And together, we will make sure that humanity's story is one worth telling." Lucas looked out at the stars, the endless expanse of space stretching out before him. For the first time in years, he felt at peace. The loneliness that had once consumed him was gone, replaced by a sense of purpose and connection. He was no longer just a man lost in the wilderness. He was part of something much greater. And as the ship continued to travel through the stars, Lucas realized that his journey had only just begun.